Well, it's a feature Friday. We always like having somebody in studio. Will Reuter is here, Home Builders Association of Kansas City on KCMO. So much attention over the last week on the affordability crisis in this country, specifically around home ownership. There have been ideas floated out there like 50-year mortgages, portable mortgages. But the reality is there's also just a lot of issues happening on the supply side that have to be addressed and then also on the regulation side. So, Will, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Pete, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate being with you.
You bet. So let's just start off nationwide. I know every market's different. We'll get to Kansas City. But nationwide, what do you see happening when it comes to the lack of affordability, specifically in the single-family home market right now?
It is so difficult to supply the market under the current conditions. I mean, we know that mortgage rates are high. Consumers see that every day, whether they want to refinance their home or get into a home. Builders are watching that consumer confidence, whether or not it exists. If what I build, is there going to be somebody there to buy it? So there's that trepidation. But also on the construction loan side, because most home builders are not using their own capital to build these types of homes and provide that product that's going to be a home buyer product, their cost of borrowing is enormously high. I mean, if you're trying to, borrow, 7 figures worth of funds in order to go build a project, you're still paying at an annualized rate 14, 15, 16%. So even their cost of capital is high. So there's just this softness that exists in the market nationwide, and it's very regionally specific about who's been able to kind of build ahead, so to speak, and what markets have certainly lagged behind.
So let's go through some of that because what markets are you seeing doing well or doing better? What are doing not as well? And where does Kansas City stack up in that?
Kansas City has never had the boom and bust cycle, really, that a lot of those other kind of sexier markets have had. Your Austins, your Charlottes, your Boise, Idahos. So the peaks are never as high here in Kansas City, but the valleys are never as low. We're pretty consistent in that regard. When you go back to the Great Recession, that was an event that local home builders really never truly recovered from. Nationwide, we recovered to about 72% of pre-recession permitting activity during the pandemic. Kansas City only recovered to 51% of pre-recession permitting activity. We're essentially building half or less fewer homes than what we were doing 20 years ago. And so when I see markets that have been able to get permitting expedited, that capital knows how it's going to be treated in those markets, there's a relatively predictable timeline of when this project is going to come online. Those are the markets that you're seeing a tremendous amount of home building existing, mostly in your Sun Belt markets. I mean, yes, it's very interesting to look at Florida and Texas. That's part of that national ecosystem of housing information that is very interesting. But does it apply to a place like Kansas City? The answer is no, but places like Florida and Texas have said, yeah, we want housing. In fact, last year, Dallas and Houston built 90,000 homes in just those two markets. The entire state of California did 60,000 markets.
60,000 homes in California, 90,000 in Dallas and Houston combined.
Correct. And it's because Dallas and Houston were like, yeah, we want housing, and we're going to make it much easier for you to do that. Our population is exploding. If we don't allow this to occur, we're going to be driving up prices for home buyers. We're going to be driving up rents. So we got to make this easier. So in the markets in which the capital has been invited in and treated well, you're seeing housing and you're seeing moderating costs in those markets.
So Kansas City, it seems like, has fallen behind a little bit on that front? And is that because of permitting from municipalities, or what do you see going on then here?
Yeah, so the Kansas City HBA, we've got a defined jurisdiction. So that way a local home builders association doesn't compete with like Lawrence's HBA or St. Louis's HBA. Within our territorial jurisdiction, we cover 69 different permitting jurisdictions that all have different construction rules. Kansas and Missouri are two of only 6 states in the United States that do not have any statewide construction standards when it comes to residential. So all of the rules are coming out of City Hall or the county courthouse.
So would it be better? I mean, I'm not a fan of more regulation, but would it be better to have the states actually doing more on this front to take it out of the local municipalities and have kind of a standard one-size-fits-all approach?
Well, I think the complexity of building a home, not only within the market, but also the technical requirements of what has to go into that housing, in a lot of ways, it is unfair to ask a local city councilman to understand all of those nuances because they're a part-time legislator. You know, they got their 9 to 5, and then they spend a couple hours a week in their city council chambers, and they've got to get smart on one of the most complex yet consequential aspects of our overall economy. It's an unfair ask. So, you know, for Topeka and Jefferson City, I think there are ways for them to kind of lessen the burden on our local communities and speed up the production, because you can say it a million times, and it is as true as the day is long in home building. Time is money. If you can shorten that time, you're going to get more housing at more modest prices.
Will Reuter is here, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. So then on that front, when you look at Kansas City compared to a Dallas, compared to a Houston, what is preventing us? Not that we want to be those cities, but when it comes to the ease of building, what can be done better here on that front?
Well, I think one of the things that we've got to recognize is that if we want to make things better, then we've got to stop making things worse. And we see those ideas because housing is the topic in the United States today. This is the first time in my adult life I ever heard the two candidates for both major parties running for president talking about housing as part of their platform. I think housing and overall affordability issues were the major theme in last Tuesday's elections. It is a topic that everyone cares about. So everyone wants to fix it, and that's good. The fact that more people are talking about it is different than at any time in history. I think we've got to make sure we are setting expectations, because we don't have the housing market today because of one decision that was made yesterday. It is an aggregate of decisions that were made over decades, but we've got to start improving it now. One example of a self-inflicted wound was Kansas City, Missouri's adoption of the 2021 Energy Code. What we saw in 2023, there were 98 home building companies that pulled single-family permits in the city of Kansas City, Missouri in 2023. In 2024, that number had dwindled to 22. That was a 78% reduction in the number of companies building single-family homes in Kansas City, Missouri in 1 year because of one policy. And it was to chase a talking point, to chase federal dollars. Section 50131 of the Inflation Reduction Act said, hey, here's $1 billion for cities and states to go out and adopt this specific energy code. And so cities coming out of COVID were like, hey, the spigots are still on. Let's go get ours. And they adopted a policy in order to chase those dollars. To my knowledge, those dollars have never been received by the city, but we're living with the housing consequences of it. So what does that mean? Places like Parkville are seeing a 50% increase in permitting activity. It's those builders are realizing my future might not be in Kansas City because the return isn't there for the home buyer. We're not saying in any way, shape, or form that energy efficiency is a bad thing. Quite the contrary. Energy efficiency is a great thing. Spending less on your utility bills is something that every builder strives to provide to their buyer. But when the return outstrips the investment or fails to outstrip the investment, we're looking at 90 plus years it will take to pay back the initial investment for the construction compliance costs in saved utility bills. Wow. So you want to talk about 50-year mortgages? We've got 90 plus years of payback that are required just in order to provide a base model home. And a building code is a baseline. Nothing prevents you from going above code, above and beyond, only subject to the ability of the consumer's ability to pay for it. And so there's lots of people that build the most high-end homes that perform, you know, with a great level of air tightness, all of those things that you want to see in a home, and they're $1.5 million. And the working guy can't afford that, yet the same requirements apply to everything. What you're building.
That's unbelievable. Will Reuter is here, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City on KCMO. He's our in-studio Feature Friday guest. We'll take a quick break, come back with more of him. I want to dive into the apartment issue that I know has gotten a lot of attention as well around this community. Why is there such an incentive, seemingly, for these city officials to go ahead with these apartments when the want is for single family? That and more with Will Reuter coming up next on KCMO. Will Reuter, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City, is our Feature Friday in-studio guest on KCMO. So Well, we talked a lot about it ahead of some of the local elections last week. It's been a topic for many years, as you know, whether it's Johnson County or going out to Lee Summit, even up north now, it's a conversation. The amount of apartments that are going up in suburban parts of Kansas City, where really the demand has always traditionally been for single-family homes. That seems to be squeezing some of our suburban markets. Why is that happening, and what do you see going on?
You know, this is a metro that people want to live in. Our metro typically forms between 7,000 and 8,000 new households a year. That's people moving here. That's people creating families, people moving out on their own, all of those different aspects of someone's housing life cycle. And Kansas City is a regional draw. We're pulling people from Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, all over. This is a place people want to be. You can see that 360-degree growth trajectory around the city. We've got, not only the new airport, we've got the intermodal for trucking logistics, I-70 and I-35, the crossroads of America. You've got rail, you've got barge traffic. This is a place that companies are locating. They're bringing employees. People are coming here. And so we've got this tremendous influx of population. From 2010 to 2020, the Kansas City Metro saw a 9% increase in our overall population. That is 182,000 individuals over that decade. We did not add 182,000 units of housing over that decade, particularly not on the single family side. And so there's a lot of people that are just like, we got to fill the gap. We got to have a place to put people. Returning young professionals who just got, a law degree from KU or they got a business degree from MU, wherever, and they're coming here and there just isn't enough places for people to live in the places they want to be. And so I think a lot of communities are panicking. They're like, we've got to make sure that we've got a tax base, not only on the property tax paying side, but on the sales tax paying side to provide services and, fund the schools, all of those types of things. And so if your zoning requires that you spread a bunch of people out, eventually the economics of the day say you got to stack them up. And so, when you're looking at credit access for multifamily versus credit access for single family, there's a big disparity in how that capital views markets and ultimately how that capital is deployed. For example, on a multifamily project, you're building that, you're getting it permitted, and you're anticipating a certain return on the rental rates and completion timelines, and it's relatively predictable. But if you don't time the market, like when that project is done and you're ready to start moving people in, if demand completely went away and you've got some vacancy, you can modify the terms of your lease agreements to fill it back up. You can either, bring the rents down, or you can jack them way up if your cost ultimately superseded it. It's a lot more grace on the multifamily side of things. Whereas on the single family development side, these guys are going to their lenders, they're going to their investors, all of those things, saying, hey, this is the project. They're like, are you sure in 3 years that this housing is going to be acceptable to people? What if X, Y, and Z happen in the global, ecosystem, and we're not able to actually get these things sold? We've got to charge a premium on this capital because this is more of a gamble.
So it's more convenient for the builders, sad to say, or at least those who are providing capital to the builders. It's more convenient for the city councils who say we want to stack up, not across. And in the end, the young home buyer who just wants to get into that first house is getting squeezed here.
Yeah, so I will say that there are certainly companies that are building everything residential. They build the apartments. They've got maybe some quadplexes, triplexes, twin villas, your duplex product, and then your single family attached, single family detached. There's a whole bunch of different stuff within that ecosystem, but few of them are actually trying to play in all of those spaces. They specialize, because if you get too broad on something, they're going to be like, well, what are you actually doing? Your lender's going to be like, what kind of business are you? I need to see your underwriting, how you're going to deploy these things. So it's probably more a consequence of, hey, it's harder and more expensive to build single family. And then when you check all of the boxes that you've got to check from a regulatory standpoint, I'll say it this way, Pete. I use a 5L device to describe the the housing supply market and perhaps some of the barriers that exist. It's lots, the land you're building on, labor, who's actually doing the work, lumber, which is a euphemism for all of the materials that go into it. Then there's lending. What are the credit conditions on both the business as well as the consumer side? And then the laws. What's allowed to be built where and to what degree? And the confluence of those 5 L's, think about it in Venn diagram format, the overlap is where the market is. And so if, the credit conditions are not good and that circle pulls away from the middle, it shrinks what's actually able to be delivered. And so if you've got a single family project that is operating on the margins of that overlap area, and there is a either major or even minor change to one of those 5 L's, that project's probably not going to happen. Multifamily is a little bit more forgiving.
Okay. All right. Well, Will Reuter is here, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. So what is the answer, whether it's local city councils or the states here, Kansas and Missouri, what is the answer to try to get these home prices down? Because I just look at it and I'm like, man, I got into my house 6 years ago now. It's probably gone up 40, 50%.
Yeah.
And you don't know if you could afford the house that you're currently living in. And it was just the timing was right. I got lucky on the timing. And I feel bad for people who are a few years behind me in that and what they're trying to do right now. So what do we do here?
That is really the danger that our society and our economy has right now is everyone that built a house before or bought a house before 2020 and everyone trying to buy one afterwards. It's a possible have and have not situation that we have got to solve, because if younger generations have no pathway to economic prosperity through home ownership, then they become despondent, they despair, and they make different choices than what they otherwise would have. We don't see homeowners, bailing on their communities. Homeowners are, joining the Rotary Club. They're volunteering at their church. They invest in their community because a homeowner is an equity stakeholder in that community. And if they don't have an entry point to get into that process, just look at the most recent data that was released by the National Association of Realtors last week. The average age of the first-time homebuyer in the United States today is 40 years old. The average age of the overall homebuyer is 62. If I'm 24 years old and I'm seeing those things, that puts me in panic mode, or it makes me just say, well, forget it. This home ownership is not for me. And that's a really dangerous place to be. So our message to our local elected officials is to let our local industry get in there and solve this. We can't solve it completely on our own. We need their help. But really all we're asking for is permission. There's a tremendous amount of pent-up innovation. My members, they want to build things that the people inside of them own that roof over their head. That is a stabilizing force in society and a stabilizing force in the economy. And so if we can get to yes more quickly, and that path to yes for more housing, whether it's some type of owner-occupied product, something you can build equity in, that is, if you get to yes more quickly and you say, we've never seen this before, but you know what? We're going to trust you. And we know you're not going to make a bad business decision, that you're just going to go out and build something that looks terrible or that nobody wants to buy. These guys in the home building industry are a lot smarter than that.
Yeah.
They're not building things for their own sake. They're building what people want to buy in the places that they want to live. So really what local officials can do is not only get to yes, but they've got to make sure they're focusing on having great schools and public safety, because you're also not going to seek out a home ownership opportunity in a place that might not
where no one wants to raise
the
kids.
Best place.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Get out of the way, focus on public safety and the schools, and they'll be okay. That's it.
And get to yes, and we'll make some magic happen, and there will be more homeowners in your community participating in it.
Good stuff. Will Reuter, Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City, thank you so much for the great conversation and for being here.
Happy to be here, Pete. Thank you.
You bet.